For thousands of years, one predator ruled this frozen kingdom without challenge, becoming the undisputed king of the Arctic. This frozen world once belonged to ice, and to the hunter perfectly adapted to survive where almost nothing else could. Every hunt begins with patience. Here, survival belongs not to the fastest predator, but to the one willing to wait. Every part of its body is engineered for this world. Massive paws grip the ice, thick fur traps warmth, and an extraordinary sense of smell detects prey from kilometers away. Beneath this frozen surface lies the resource that sustains the Arctic's greatest predator. Without seals, the kingdom cannot survive. For every successful hunt, there is a reason beyond survival. The future of the Arctic depends on the next generation. Long before satellites and research vessels arrived, the Inuit learned to read the Arctic. The ice, the seals, and the bears were all part of the same story. For thousands of years, the Arctic followed familiar rhythms. Ice formed, predators hunted, prey survived, and life adapted to one of the harshest environments on Earth. To those who lived here, the Arctic seemed eternal. Generation after generation, the ice returned, and life continued as it always had. But beneath the surface of this ancient world, a silent change was unfolding. The ice was beginning to disappear. What once appeared endless is shrinking year after year. Across the Arctic, the frozen foundation of life is retreating faster than anyone expected. For the polar bear, sea ice is not simply frozen water. It is a hunting platform, a highway, a refuge, and the very foundation of survival. For decades, the warning signs were easy to miss, but now, even the Arctic itself is revealing just how quickly the balance is shifting. The problem is not only that the ice is disappearing. The ice that remains is younger, thinner, and far less reliable than the frozen platform that once dominated the Arctic. As the ice retreats farther from shore, every meal demands a greater effort. Distances that once took minutes can now take days. Polar bears are powerful swimmers, but they evolved to travel on ice. As the distances grow, even their remarkable endurance is pushed to its limit. A polar bear's survival depends on fat reserves built during successful hunts. When hunting opportunities disappear, the consequences become impossible to hide. For thousands of years, polar bears depended on the sea. Now, many are spending longer periods on land, searching for opportunities their ancestors rarely needed. The Arctic's greatest hunter was never designed to live this way. Yet as the ice retreats, many bears are forced to survive on whatever they can find. As the ice retreats, it leaves behind more than open water. It creates opportunity. And somewhere beyond the horizon, another predator is beginning to notice. For thousands of years, the Arctic belonged to creatures adapted to ice. But now, a different kind of hunter is entering the kingdom. Unlike the polar bear, the orca is not tied to ice. It belongs to the ocean itself, carrying speed, intelligence, and teamwork into every hunt. An orca's greatest weapon is not strength, it is cooperation. Every hunt is a lesson passed from one generation to the next. Strength alone does not make an apex predator. Orcas succeed because they can plan, adapt, and solve problems together. Orcas possess some of the most advanced social intelligence in the animal kingdom. Knowledge is shared, remembered, and passed through generations. Every pod speaks its own language. Unique calls allow family members to coordinate hunts, recognize one another, and navigate a changing world together. For generations, thick sea ice protected much of the Arctic from ocean predators. But as the ice retreats, new hunting grounds are opening for the first time. Ahead of them swims one of the Arctic's most elusive animals. For centuries, narwhals escaped danger by retreating into ice-choked waters. But the ice is no longer the barrier it once was. For thousands of years, sea ice acted as a fortress. Narwhals could escape where larger predators could not follow. Today, that advantage is fading. The arrival of the orca is not an isolated event. It is a sign that the Arctic itself is changing. As the ice retreats, a new kind of predator is expanding into territory that was once beyond its reach. Scientists tracking Arctic wildlife began noticing a remarkable pattern. Every summer, more orcas were traveling farther north than ever before. Just a few decades ago, these waters remained locked behind thick sea ice for most of the year. Today, they are becoming part of the orcas' expanding hunting grounds. Some pods are now reaching latitudes once considered beyond their range. Places where thick ice protected Arctic wildlife for thousands of years are opening for longer each summer. As sea ice disappears earlier and returns later, the Arctic hunting season grows longer. For predators built for open water, every extra week brings new opportunities. The arrival of orcas changes more than the food chain. Across the Arctic, prey species are beginning to alter ancient migration routes in an attempt to avoid a predator they rarely faced before. For centuries, narwhals survived by escaping into the Arctic's most isolated waters. But today, those refuges are becoming hunting grounds. What unfolds here was once thought nearly impossible to witness. A hunt few humans have ever seen, taking place in a part of the world long protected by ice. The strength of the pod is not speed or power alone. It is the ability to transform an entire landscape into a hunting tool. For generations, narwhals relied on geography and ice to survive. But in a warming Arctic, the places that once guaranteed safety are disappearing. The Arctic is not changing in the future. It is changing now, and with every season of melting ice, new winners and new losers emerge. For centuries, seals formed the foundation of the polar bear's survival. Now, another predator is targeting the same resource. This is not a battle fought face to face. It is a competition for food. And as the Arctic changes, every seal becomes more valuable. The polar bear's greatest strength was never its size. It was the ice itself. And with every year of melting, that advantage grows weaker. Where polar bears depend on isolated platforms of ice, orcas command the open ocean. Every kilometer of newly ice-free water expands their reach. Both are apex predators. Both depend on seals, but they hunt in completely different ways. And in a changing Arctic, one strategy is becoming far more effective. A single polar bear hunts alone. Orcas hunt as a family. When they work together, they can challenge prey far larger than any one individual could ever overpower. The polar bear relies on patience, experience, and instinct. But unlike the orca, it faces every challenge alone. Neither predator is becoming stronger. The difference is that one is losing its world, while the other is gaining a new one. There is no battlefield, no direct confrontation. Yet every seal taken by one predator is a seal unavailable to the other. Nature does not choose winners and losers. It rewards those best suited to the conditions of the moment. And the conditions are changing. As traditional hunting grounds disappear, some polar bears are attempting something rarely seen before. They are turning to the rivers. For generations, polar bears depended almost entirely on seals. Now, Some are displaying behaviors rarely witnessed before, revealing just how quickly life in the Arctic is changing. Catching fish may seem ordinary for many predators. For a polar bear, it represents something far more significant: adaptation. When seals become harder to find, polar bears are forced to explore alternatives. But not all calories are created equal. Across parts of the Arctic, polar bears are spending more time on land than ever before. But land offers survival, not prosperity. The coastline has become a place of opportunity and uncertainty. Here, polar bears search for anything the ocean might deliver. Adaptation is possible, but evolution works over generations. While the Arctic is changing within a lifetime, the polar bear is adapting. The Arctic is changing, but whether adaptation can outrun transformation remains one of the greatest unanswered questions in the North. Few people know the Arctic better than those who have lived here for generations. And many are witnessing changes they never expected to see. Those who have spent a lifetime here speak of an Arctic that felt different. Winters arrived earlier, the ice stayed longer, and the ocean remained hidden beneath a frozen shield. Then came something many northern communities rarely saw in the past. More and more orcas appearing in places once protected by ice. As the Arctic changes, hunters of every kind are being forced to adapt. The old patterns no longer guarantee success. The Arctic has always demanded adaptation. The difference today is the speed of change, affecting every life connected to this frozen world. For thousands of years, the Arctic belonged to the polar bear. Now, that kingdom is becoming smaller with every passing season. While the ice retreats, another predator thrives. The conditions that challenge the polar bear create opportunity for the orca. This story was never about a fight between two predators. It was about a changing world, choosing which hunter it favors. The outcome will not be decided in a single season. It will unfold across decades, as every year reshapes the Arctic a little more. The Arctic's future will not belong entirely to the polar bear, nor entirely to the orca. It will belong to those able to adapt to a world that is changing before our eyes.